Hello, South Asians, Middle Eastern, Native Americans, Arab, Persian and Black people only? So in today's video I will talk about G-Idol's problem with cultural appropriation and why it is wrong. However, before we start I want to make clear that I personally really love them a lot. I have been following them since debut and I actually do like their music a lot. But there are just things that they do that I can't agree with. This is no hate, just an informational video. Also I have seen one YouTuber who made a video about this, and I feel like it wasn't their right to speak on this issue since they didn't belong to any of the cultures or religions mentioned. And I want to give you a little more background to understand the reasons. So when we look back in history, we find that people of color have faced too much oppression. Let's start with imperialism for example. European countries, like Spain, Great Britain, Germany, France etc. invaded different parts of the world, basically non-white parts of the world like Africa, Asia, America, just for egoistic purposes. They exploited them, ripped them away from their culture and even forced their ideologies onto them. As a South Asian for example I can tell you that these countries still suffer from the consequences of imperialism. They were exploited and made dependent on European countries. Colonizers would create fights between the different religions within South Asia just to make the country unstable and to control them easily. People hungered, got enslaved etc. Beauty standards, that being fair is prettier for example, still exist today and thus a lot of people suffer from low self-esteem issues or other mental illnesses. And that's just a glimpse of the things done. In African regions, multiple ethnic groups got killed, raped and enslaved. They were exploited to the extent that it's almost impossible for them to recover from this now. They suffer from the consequences today. African slaves got forced to work in America for egoistic, economic benefits of white people. They got lynched for the color of their skin. The culture and their homes got ripped away from them. They were made helpless and have to suffer until today. These traumas were inherited even in today's generation and a lot of people don't even know. White people took away the natives' land, also they were oppressed and lynched for centuries. And now you wonder why? Because one race thought they were superior, because one race thought they have to quote-unquote civilize the world, because one race believed they need to force their ideologies on other people. But you don't even need to look back in the history even now, people in the Middle East get killed by Western countries. Murdering them is called collateral damage. When these people had to hide and fear for their cultures for centuries, when these people have to feel embarrassed for their culture even today, when these people were exploited for their cultures and made fun of, how does it make it right for someone to come and take this valuable part of this culture and call it their own, to call it an aesthetic, to call it cute or fashionable when it has such a huge history of oppression? Especially when some part of this history is kept a secret, it's barely talked about, it gets denied, even by teachers. It's hurtful and wrong. Educate yourself about these histories, educate yourself on the culture. Appreciating a culture is right if it's done respectfully and in the right manner. Our cultures aren't your exotic trends. Our cultures aren't sweet accessories. A religion is so valuable to a lot of people. Especially Muslim people have to face a lot of Islamophobia, mostly in Western countries. Muslim people are sometimes not allowed to build a mosque, get harassed for wearing a hijab or praying. Don't use mosques as an aesthetic. It's disrespectful. Educate yourself about the history of henna and we will appreciate you for wearing it. Don't make it look like something mysterious or unknown, something crazy. The worst thing about is that there was a lot of generalization and mixing up. Elements from Native American people were wrongly interpreted and mixed with so-called quote-unquote African instrumental. Two completely different cultures were carelessly thrown into a box. And then they called it their own style. No, it's not your style. You are stealing someone's culture but only the things that fit your aesthetic. Again, this is very disrespectful. Now I want Girl Slowzily to give her opinions on this. As an African American, she understands this issue the best.
The issue with African style and Soyeon. While preparing for their next challenge on Queendom, Soyeon, the leader of G-Idol and the one behind their concepts, suggested that the group use African-style shouting and drums so that they could make the song Fire similar to their music style, or as she calls it, ethnic hip.
약간 아프리카의 좀 뭔가 그런 악기들로 바꾸는 거야. 뭔가 똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥 이러면은 이제 우리 스타일을 좀 살리는 거죠. 우리가 기계음을 거의 안 쓰잖아. 그걸 좀 살리고 약간 에스닉 힙.
As we see from the performance, it neither sounds nor looks like any African sound to exist. So it's clear she just put some drums on a beat and called it African. While preparing for the soundtrack of The Lion King, Beyoncé, her entire family, and Park Wo team, traveled through multiple countries in Africa and sought out some of its popular and upcoming artists from east to west. She stated that the album, titled The Gift, is a love letter to Africa and insisted on keeping the album authentic.
I did not want to water it down. I also did not want to lose the authenticity of Africa.
Although time was limited, you see that she put much thought and effort into the album. You see that it is very authentic. You see that she shared the spotlight with actual African artists. The thing is, Beyoncé didn't have to do that. She could have been in her Soyeon bag and put any type of drums on a beat and called it African style. But she didn't. Because she knows and understands that it's not just a concept. It's not just an aesthetic. It's art. It's culture. There's a beautiful history behind it. And as we've seen before, Soyeon just doesn't care. Africa is more than just half-naked savages with facial markings that live in dirt huts and spend all day shouting while playing the drums and hopping around in a circle. And if that is the case, you don't just plop it on for an aesthetic. What Soyeon did is ugly. It's racially insensitive, it's ignorant, and borderline racism. Yes, racism. They also mixed it with elements of Indian culture and Native American war cries, which gives us further proof that she is absolutely clueless and doesn't care about / know what she is talking about. It's all for an aesthetic. It's ugly. Because of the issue with Yuki a while ago, I know that they see fans' comments and complaints, which even further proves that again, she don't care. What it also shows is an underlying issue of South Korean ignorance, ethnocentrism, and racism. As this has been an issue before, G-IDLE was created. They know exactly what they are doing, but certain fans, along with Arabers and Sunnis, won't care until the roles are reversed.
This issue can only be solved with educating these idols and make clear that they are being ignorant. They should learn about these cultures and maybe they will understand why these things are so valuable. Every time you see your idol appropriating a culture, instead of defending them, let them know why they are wrong. They should apologize to let the people that they offended know, that they actually take us serious. Anyways, if your culture has been appropriated, you can always be part of this conversation, and if not, you may ask questions to understand this issue better. I hope I was able to help, and I will see you next time.
You make your jokes about white people? Don't you think that's a kind of racism? Don't you think that's dun 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 reverse racism? I said no. I don't think that's reverse racism. Not because I think reverse racism doesn't exist, right? I could be a reverse racist if I wanted to. All I would need would be a time machine, right? And what I'd do is I'd get in my time machine, I'd go back in time to before Europe colonized the world, right? And I'd convince the leaders of Africa, Asia, the Middle East, Central and South America to invade and colonize Europe, right? Just occupy them, steal their land and resources, set up some kind of, like, I don't know, trans-Asian slave trade where we exported white people to work on giant rice plantations in China. Just ruin Europe over the course of a couple of centuries so all their descendants would want to migrate out and live in the places where black and brown people come from. But of course, in that time, I'd make sure I set up systems that privilege black and brown people at every conceivable social, political, and economic opportunity. White people would never have any hope of real self-determination. Just every couple of decades, make up some fake war as an excuse to go and bomb them back to the Stone Age and say it's for their own good because their culture's inferior, and then, just for kicks, subject white people to colored people's standards of beauty, so they end up hating the color of their own skin, eyes, and hair. If, after hundreds and hundreds of years of that, I got on stage at a comedy show and said, hey, what's the deal with white people? Why can't they dance? That would be reverse racism.